This is nice. This is a blueberry IPA from Athletic Brewing Company. Athletic Brewing Company, not sponsors of this video, but you'll notice I frequently drink their stuff. They do craft NA, non-alcoholic versions of beers. I like it. So I don't know where to start. I think I'm going to start with the music, although I also want to talk about the performance, and I want to talk about the trip from Pittsburgh to Erie, because it's a great road trip. Mahler's Third is my favorite Mahler symphony. I think I can say that. I know I can say that. I'm just trying to think whether it's meaningful to say things like that. And I'm going to say that not only is it meaningful, but it is necessary to come out with a statement about your favorite Mahler symphony. I think it's the third, and then there's Daylight. I love all of them except the eighth. I'm sorry. The Mahlerian project, right? The idea of, in the program notes, Mahler, there's quotes. These are quite famous quotes where Mahler talks about the objectives of the symphony. Kind of the profundity of his intention, to create an entire world in a symphony, to use the musical form to address questions of human existence, human teleology, so really the deepest questions about what it is to be a human, what it is to be alive, and to use music in the musical form to address those questions in a way that is not secondary. And I wonder, as an audience member, if you were to come and hear a piece that was written by a composer live today, let's say a piece by me, and I said, the greatest problems of humanity, those which I have evoked and attempted to solve in the Second Symphony, why do we exist? Do we continue to exist after death? Can no longer touch me here in this symphony. To write a symphony means to me to construct a world with all the tools of the available technique. The ever-new and ever-changing content determines its own form. Would you take that seriously as an audience member? Do we still have that language available to us? Would you believe me? Would you think that that's why a symphony is written? And then I turn the question to myself and say, if I wrote a piece and said that, is it true? And if it is true, how could I have written so much crap, so much trivial garbage? I remember listening to this symphony in college. So, as a 19, 20-year-old. And the final movement, the sixth movement, which is the movement I'm going to be focusing on here, just actually literally made my knees melt. I couldn't stand up. I was down listening to it and there's a moment where a child's choir comes in with this sort of celestial clockwork. Let's see, bim, bam. The children's chorus imitates the sound of bells, while the women's chorus sings the Wunderhorn text. Es sungen drei Engel, three angels sing. And Mahler subtitled this in his notes, What the Angels Tell Me. So the movements of this, I told you I was going to be jumping around, but we'll get it all covered. So there are 6 movements in the symphony, and there are subtitles that I like, although you may not. But the first movement, the first part, Pan's Awakening, Summer Marches, a progression of Bacchus. And then the second movement, What the Flowers of the Field Tell Me. The third movement, a scherzo, What the Animals of the Forest Tell Me. Fourth movement, very slowly, this is the movement with the alto solo singing text from Nietzsche, What Man Tells Me. The fifth movement, the children's bell, What the Angels Tell Me. And then a final movement, the sixth movement, What Love Tells Me. So from the moment that child's chorus comes in, I am on a trajectory to the moon and beyond. When I was first doing a podcast, and I saw it before video, let's see if I can dig this up. I did a podcast episode on the Socrates apology, right? The dialogue that represents Socrates' last night. So he knew he was going to drink hemlock at dawn, and so for his night, so he knew when he was going to die, and he chose to spend it in dialogue with his students and friends. And so I riffed off that, and I thought, what if I knew that was going to happen to me, that tomorrow at dawn I was going to die? What would I want to do? And what it came down to is I would want to be sober. I'd want to have a glass of ice-cold, sparkling water. And I would want to listen to Mahler's Third Symphony. And if my guards were kind enough to allow me to drink the hemlock so that it took effect at the end of the sixth movement, which I think they would. I've got the feeling with Socrates that the guards were quite amenable to him. They certainly let him chat up a storm for his final night. So Mahler's Third is just this piece that is, it's such an extraordinary experience that when I saw that Erie Philharmonic was performing it, I would go. I knew I would go. I knew it was going to be a wonderful concert, and it was a wonderful concert. I was curious about the orchestra, the conductor, Daniel Meyer. Also teaches here in Pittsburgh. So I was curious, and I wanted to go to the hall. I had this image that in Erie, the concert hall that the Philharmonic performs in was sort of a gem of Americana, sort of Art Deco, from back when it really mattered that you had a performing orchestra in your town, because you certainly couldn't stream whatever you wanted to hear, and you couldn't buy what you wanted to hear on a record because it might not have been recorded. You needed a symphony orchestra that could take on the music that meant something, and you needed a hall that was worthy of that. So Warner Theater in Erie really lived up to expectations. It was beautiful. I loved it. It had that, you could sort of imagine Charles Ives bunting for July 4th, and then you could imagine the orchestra with some really strong players. I mean, there's some solos in that piece that you got to be. There's no room for a lackadaisical musicianship with some of the solos, and they all came off laudably. Like I was transported. Okay, there was an intermission between the first and second movements, and I get that that's a thing that we do, but I think it's wrong. I know it's listed as part one, part two, and part one is the first movement, but I feel like taking a 15-minute intermission between the two was a mistake. But I know I don't know why we do it. What we need we need an intermission to go get a drink, or no, I think we should have done it without the intermission. It's not the most egregious intermission that I've been subjected to recently. A couple of years back, the Chamber Orchestra of Pittsburgh, which is another really great organization. I mean, we're very lucky around here. Played Messiaen, Au Canyon des Étoiles, from the Canyon to the Stars. And that was a drop dead concert, really was. But they had a flipping intermission right in the middle of it. I couldn't understand it. So we drove up to Erie on Saturday afternoon. Both Catherine and I had things to do Saturday morning. Concert was 8 o'clock Saturday. It had snowed very heavily throughout the region on Friday, but we thought we would be okay driving up. And it was not a great ride up. It wasn't actively blizzarding, but it was consistently snowing once we got above there's a line north of Pittsburgh where it snows and then it stops. It's basically, I think, Interstate 80. Because of the lake. It's right on Lake Erie, the lake effect. But there's a very dramatic cutoff. We hit it and it was snowing. Not hard, but persistently. And so we stayed outside of Erie. We got an Airbnb about 30 minutes outside of Erie. And so made it there. Had dinner reservations in Erie at a nice Italian restaurant, very characterful. A lot of character. Good. The chef, the characters, what am I saying? The chef really came through in the food. It was good. I had a wonderful weekend. I mean, I'm enthusiastic about all of these concerts, right? If you watch these reviews, you're not going to hear me sit there and say, "Oh, that was bullshit. I hated it." Because why would I say that? I might say I might not talk about a piece on a program, and I'll complain about things like the intermission or, something dumb. But music's always going to be good. So we had a great dinner. We were in the snow, so the weather was a bit rough. We made it to the hall with plenty of time. We had nice seats, and then the performance was only slightly marred by the intermission. So Mahler's third. Let's see what else I've got here. The hall, Erie Philharmonic. Yeah, I think we suffer from the ubiquity of really cosmic level performance, right? Like, we can all just go. I mean, I can go and hear the New York Philharmonic even relatively easily. I take a train or a bus. It's not. I don't think it's right, to be honest. I think it's okay to know that there's an orchestra somewhere in the world that has all the resources and all the players. But I'm really high on the Erie Philharmonic. I thought it was great. It's just a different way of listening to music that is immediate. It's right there. It should be the source of music for a community. And then questions about funding and relevance go away because, of course, it's relevant. But on the other hand, I love being able to listen to anything I want, so I don't know what to say about that. The Cosmos in a Symphony, the extent of the Mahlerian project. I already asked you what you would think if I started talking about my music like that. Let's assume that I had that intent. Then the effort of the composer has to be to develop the craft sufficient to sustain that vision. And the willingness to say no more crap. I've written a lot of crap. I've written a lot of crap because I'm a crappy composer. As my confidence in my composition has increased over the last 3 to 5 years, I still find myself writing a lot of crap because I'm hesitant to take it seriously. My New Year's resolution to be unfettered ties into all of this. And this Mahler performance really emphasized that. I've just been thinking about the piece constantly. I was anticipating it since the New Year, since I knew it was coming. I saw Maestro, that movie, the Dudley Moore. Well, not Dudley Moore. What's his name? Bradley Cooper. Dudley Moore. Dudley Moore's awesome. He's not Bradley Cooper. Playing Bernstein. And I was prepared to not like it. I don't care for biopics in general. There are a couple that I've liked, but I generally don't like them. I just don't like them. I just don't know the point. But the point for this movie, it was about love, which is what Bernstein is about. Like I really felt Bernstein as an avatar of just music. It was great. It was a great movie. Maybe I'll do another video on that movie. But it sort of helped clarify the idea of what is the liturgical integrity of the compositional intent, right? And I think it's this. It's what is love? What is compassion? How do I write that for the piano? I don't know. I don't know how I wrote this. I don't know how Mahler does what he does because I have terrible orchestration skills. It was never the focus. We took orchestration. I just didn't take it that seriously because I never wrote for orchestra. As a graduate student, maybe you write one orchestral piece in your entire program, and then who's going to play it? That's changing. I'm working on 2 pieces now that have to be done for slightly larger forces. My opera will be for a string orchestra with a piano and a couple of percussion. And gosh darn it, I had a really crystal clear idea for a piano concerto that I hope will be an adequate response to what I'm feeling right now in my Bernsteinian, Mahlerian inspiration. But it takes me years to write anything, so maybe we'll see. But I'm not a good orchestrator. That was my point here. And Mahler, I mean, it's not even the right word to use. Like, it's ridiculous how good a French horn can sound. How heartbreaking an oboe or an English horn, cor anglais, can sound in Mahler when it just comes out. It's nuts. So, a moment. Okay, this is where I start to talk about the music. There's a moment in the 6th movement of Mahler's 3rd Symphony that just destroys me. It's a linchpin in the sense that it's the last statement of a melody that begins the 6th movement, returns a few times, but then when this happens, from then on, you're really on the cadence. It still takes like 5 minutes to end. So I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to talk through, just briefly, how it appears previously in the movement, because my My point is that in a symphonic movement like Mahler, there's a moment that is what everything's about. And the composition, so I'm going to argue that the entire composition, at least the entire sixth movement, is there to provide context to get to this one moment. And that this is the case with other grand symphonies. I'm thinking of Bruckner and Sibelius and that kind of thing. There's a moment that sort of is pounding in the head of the composer. But the head of the composer is filled with all kinds of other ideas and understandings. So in order for that moment to have the effect that the composer wants, you have to write everything else. So there's this moment in the sixth movement of the third symphony. Let's see, can I do this without making, no. You know, I bet a YouTuber would cut all this stuff out. But I'm not a better. Here we go. All right, so it's measure 274, which is about 25 minutes into the movement. I'm going to introduce it. Normally, I don't believe in apologizing, but on its own, the piano sounds okay. But it is kind of out of tune. And in a minute, I'm going to play along with Leonard Bernstein, because why not? And then you'll notice that it just makes everything sound terrible. But I'm still going to do it. So I'm going to start at measure 267. Now, no one's going to be happy with this. Those of you who are music theorists and composers and understand chords and progressions, you're not going to like how I talk about this, because I'm just going to talk about how great it is, and I'm not going to talk about why it's effective. And those of you who don't have any music theory are probably worried that I'm going to start talking about chord progressions, when I'm not. I'm just going to play something and say like, oh man, check out how good that is. Right? So don't worry. Okay, so now this is the beginning. Hang on. Here we go. That note. That note, you know. Okay, so that melody. Sorry, that's terrible, isn't it? Listen to this. It's like a prepared piano. This melody. you hear right from the beginning of the movement. So I'm going to skip back to the beginning and play you how it appears at the start. The difference being that here, then now I'm in the first 10 measures of the piece. That goes down in the final, that B. But here in the first, I know I'm going all over the place. Let me start. So the piece starts. So you can hear how that ties into what I played before, except instead of da, 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 and then that da 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 dee da is very Mahlerian. I know, it's like I was in a seminar once. This was when I was a student, of course, but I was taking a year abroad, and I was in London, but not really keeping my shit together that well. But I was in a seminar, and the professor played some music and asked for comments. Just what would you say about this piece? And I said, well, it sounds very Viennese. Did. I think it was Schoenberg. And he looked at me and was like, you fucking American. You fucking Yank. He said, this isn't a cocktail party. Anyway, so it was a stupid question, but I mean, it was a dumb answer. That's very Mahlerian. Dee-da-da-da-da-dee-da-da. That sort of neighboring motion. Okay, so back here now. This is... At the end, that later version that I played, there's a much more complicated, or at least a much more chromatic harmonization underneath this. Here we're... but listen to that chord. And here's the melody as it appears at the beginning of the beat. D major opens and closes that theme, but this is just a da 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 dee da da. It's a downward scale. If I go back to my my moment here. Where is it? Oops, here it is. First off, is and it also starts higher. Compared to, I'm sure there's a quicker way to jump around the score. Compared to it really is the case, though, that any four-note descending pattern in this piece is specifically referencing that motive. I mean, this is how precise. Mahler is so. He's just such a good composer. Let me check my notes here. Before I wrap up. Okay, so the moment. Oh, I wrote here, it reminds me of Brunhilde. Yeah, okay. So the challenge as a listener, the challenge as a listener for me is to stay awake when that kind of music, when that moment happens. And I really do mean awake. If I'm not particularly engaged by a piece of music, if it's tootling along, I'll sit there and it's, just listening. There's a certain kind of musical experience that sort of knocks me out. And from the outside, it looks like I'm sleeping, but I'm not. I really just do. I just kind of black out. That moment in Mahler is one where I know it's coming, so I can maintain awareness even if I am really on a different level of experience. When Brunhilde immolates, I've got so terribly out of tune. But this, oh my God. So, talking about context, right? That theme happens twice in the entire ring cycle. 15 hours, 20 hours, how long it is. Here, as Brunhilde is about to ride her horse, Granier, right? Granier into the fires of Valhalla, Siegfried's dead. The only other time you hear it is Sieglinde sings it in Valkyrie as she's about to flee. And Siegmund is dead. She is pregnant with Siegfried. So it's the love theme. No. I've been fortunate enough to hear the ring cycle as a cycle twice. Once in DC, and then shortly after, just a couple of years after, at the Met, both times with my dad. And your fourth night at the end of that moment, man. So context and meaning. What I wrote in my notes there was that Messiaen, who's another composer I talk a lot about here, kind of takes those moments and just expands them, turns them into these patterns that last for infinity. Just that moment, I mean, you're suspended in this blissful energy that's the Messiaen moment, without the sort of narrative context to get you there. You don't need it. You just go right in. That's too much. Anyway, here's what I'm going to do now. Get the idea, right? So then it goes on. It's just nuts how much I love that piece. So anyway, thumbs up to the Erie Philharmonic, Mahler third, and thank you for listening to this. If you like this kind of stuff, subscribe, because there's always going to be tons of it. Soon, within the next couple of weeks, my new piano will have arrived. I was right up here, but I may start doing some of these videos down there if I'm going to be playing on my beautiful new piano. Anyway,